Yeah. Good evening, everyone, from joining us from Facebook and also YouTube. Good and welcome to the AI panel discussion today for at the MSTW 2022. And thank you for joining us this pleasant afternoon on this Tuesday. We hope that everyone enjoys this next 2 hours and will be able to engage with us, of course, throughout the next 2 hours and have a pleasant experience throughout. So this year we are of course YME, and this year is actually our 7th year of the MSTW, the Malaysian Students Technology Week. We've been organizing this since 2016 and have continuously worked to deliver outstanding standards to our members and also educate those that are like-minded and also connect them with the experts in the STEM field. This year our theme is sustainability, and we have the aim of educating others on this concept, and in terms of actually there are 3 pillars, so the social, environmental, and also economic aspects of it. So we hope that we can share to you and also bring some insights to you in terms of this area today for in this panel session. And we hope that you learn some very insightful information from our set of panelists today. This year and today is actually our 2nd day of our 4-day lineup of subtopics. We are currently on the 16th of August, so today is the AI subtopic, and we'll be discussing on, of course, AI with our panelists later on, which we will be introducing. So today we have Dr. Poo Kwan Hung, Mr. Hossain Tauhidi from KidoCode, and Theng Hui, the CTO of Hiredly, here with us, and also Mr. Shankar Ramanathan. First, we'd like to introduce Dr. Poo, and we hope that he can share some insights from today. Welcome Dr. Poo to the screen. He is actually a PhD in the distributed system from Nagaya Institute of Technology, Japan. And also he is also the founder of TensorFlow and Deep Learning Malaysia Group, and also the lead data scientist in British American Tobacco, BAT. Next, we have Mr. Hossain Tauhidi from the CEO of KidoCode. He is an edtech company that is dedicated to providing personalized and adaptive education system for future knowledge workers, a focus on areas of interest such as software engineering, digital art, and entrepreneurship. He is a master's holder of artificial intelligence from University Putra Malaysia, and also a former university lecturer at Asia Pacific University. So we'd like to also welcome Mr. Theng Hui from Hiredly. Hiredly is a company which specializes in hiring people and also providing a platform in terms of basically engaging the industry with also those that are getting employed. So he is also the former head of artificial intelligence and frontiers in Plus Malaysia. So welcome him. And also we finally have Mr. Shankar from the CEO of Evlos, an AI company focused on automating quality control in manufacturing. For example, using cameras and sensors to detect defects. He is a bachelor's holder in economics from the University of Warwick. So we hope to have him share insights from his side on the perhaps the financial and also those type of areas. So this is what we will be hoping to discuss too. So back to our panel discussion today, we would like to perhaps introduce and also have everyone from the panel discuss on their, introduce themselves to the audience, of course, and we hope to have everyone have a pleasant day today. So perhaps Dr. Poo, you can introduce yourselves first once again.
Okay, sure. So hi everyone. So, good afternoon to everyone watching live. So, basically, my name is Kwan Hong. You can call me KH. So, I'm currently working as the lead data scientist at BAT. So, I helped BAT to develop a lot of machine learning model to actually work on the area of RGM. So, RGM we stand for Revenue Growth Management. So, basically, we use data analytics to drive revenue growth for the BAT all over the world. So we have a team of data scientists, data analytics team based in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and we serve the whole BAT all over the world. Like you mentioned just now, I'm also very passionate about communities. So I actually founded and managed two communities in Malaysia, the TensorFlow and Deep Learning Malaysia group, and also the Malaysia R user group. So nice. Thanks for the invite, and looking forward to have a good discussion over here.
Thank you, Dr. Bu. Thank you. Next up, can I have Mr. Teng Hui to introduce yourself?
Hi, thank you, Ziwei. My name is Teng Hui, or you can call me TH. Yeah, thanks for the invitation, and I'm happy to share my personal experience here. And do you know that I study AI actually? AI was my first degree. I think it's about 20 years ago already. So it was quite surprised me also that time when I got to know like University of Malaya, actually has AI as this majoring. So without thinking twice, I know I'm going to love this subject. So it became my first choice. And then, during the whole 3 years in the uni, I study a lot of cognitive science, fuzzy logic, neural network. So that time the AI is very different from what I observe today, right? Because that time is more on a robotic kind of approach on this artificial intelligence. And I still remember the first language I learned, it was not Python. It's a Prolog kind of thing. I think it stopped kind of supporting this language already. And yeah, so after graduate, I remember there's no AI job. And the nearest I remember was in Singapore, right? So I chose to stay in Malaysia, then not in AI, but in telecommunication industry for, I think, almost like 13 or 14 years. So I do from R&D, technical support to solution architecture. So this is where I built my foundation. And until like 4 or 5 years back, then finally I landed in this forte area, heading an AI team in a corporate. That time I remember we have a lot of CCTV. We do all this image processing, chatbot, for example, also to handle our customer service. Then a lot of predictive modeling also based on all the transactional data that we receive. Okay, and now I move to CTO role in a hybrid recruitment company now. So recruitment, legacy industry, but excited to apply AI as well on this new business to me. All right, there's a little bit about my background. Nice to meet you all.
Thank you. And next, can we have Uncle Code to introduce himself?
Invitation. My name is Hussein, but since 6 years ago, everybody, including my family members, called me Uncle Code. I'm CEO and founder of CUDA-Code, the largest community for training teenagers and children with computational thinking. We have around 20,000 users. And the main important thing that we engage, and I think later we can talk more about it, is bringing machine learning in favor of providing adaptive learning for children. A system, environment that can sense and build dynamically educational profile for students based on their weaknesses, strengths, and all this kind of stuff. So that is the place that we get engaged more and more into artificial intelligence and machine learning, and also a bunch of data analysis. There's a general term, education data mining, EDM, or learning analytics in this area, which refers to building system that can sense student information, guess their challenges, predict their boredom, or even, and many more interesting parameters, which I think, especially after COVID, is getting more important to extract more data. More data means more fun. And then from this environment to let us to build better applications, to provide something very different than conventional education system, to make it finally a student-centric rather than being teacher-centric, the model that we faced with it for the last 200 years after 18th century, which was designed by industrial revolution to produce as soon as possible a lot of workers to teach same thing to everybody, assembly line classroom, and as soon as possible go and work in a manufacturer. But now we're facing a generation that they know better than their teachers and parents because of the internet. But now they need a different platform. That's what we have started to do. And this is my area. So bringing AI and machine learning into education for children. And thank you again inviting me here today. I would love to hear from other people and share something and learn and take something back for myself.
Yeah, great point right there. But yeah, thank you, Uncle Ko, for that introduction.
Welcome.
And finally, yeah, yes, but not least, Shankar. Shankar, you are muted. So if you can.
Sorry, I think I'm muted. Okay, let me start again. So my name is Shankar. I'm the CEO of Ablos. We're a computer vision company. We're an AI company, but we focus primarily on computer vision and manufacturing. I think I'm the only one here who's got a non-technical background. I did economics, sold out. But over the years of starting this company, I kind of learned a lot about AI, machine learning, primarily computer vision. And I think one of the key challenges that we find all the time is, being in an industrial setting and actually, training a model when your customers are not often forthcoming with data and things like that. You have to find very creative ways around actually solving the problem. We tend to deal with situations where you have very, very limited amounts of data, and you have to get a very high amount of precision with that small sample size of data, and that's kind of I think one of the fun aspects of being in an industrial computer vision role. You often have to problem solve in very interesting ways. But yeah, thanks for having me, and I really look forward to the discussion that we're going to have.
Thanks much. Thanks, Shankar. All right. Now that we've kind of introduced everyone, and also everyone has kind of spoken of on what their background is, I guess it's a good point to start with the questions that we'll be discussing today. So first of all, we're going to be going through some of the sustainability. Of course, we're going to talk about sustainability, how AI can contribute to combating these issues, of course. And then we're going to be talking about the applications of AI and the current trend of it, and also we're then going to talk about the limitations, where we're going to be considering the factors, those reasons why companies are hesitating. We're going to focus on these, and finally we'll be talking about how Malaysia is then keeping up with the advancements of AI. So hopefully everyone here, of course, will be able to share insightful information throughout the session. All right. So starting off with sustainability, perhaps, of course, Uncle Ko, you can share some, what your ideas are in terms of how AI can contribute to the environmental aspect of the sustainability focus. So perhaps you can share some instances where AI has been involved in this aspect, perhaps. Yeah.
Come to my mind. One is the environment, and the other one is the style of our living, the way that we live. I want to give some examples about these two areas. I think AI definitely helping us to better understand and manage our natural resources. For example, AI can be used to monitor environmental data more accurately and efficiently, helping us to make better decisions about how to conserve energy and water. I'm going to give some example. One example that how AI is helping to conserve energy and water is through the development of a smart irrigation system, a very popular topic now. This system uses the data from weather forecasting and sensors to optimize watering schedule. which can result in significant saving in both water and energy usage. And that is amazing because you can put this in a larger scale without human engagement and those kind of conventional limits that can be down easily by interesting calculation, interesting devices. So that's one example. Maybe it's good that I talk about, give an example in renewable energy sources as well. AI helping to develop new and renewable energy sources by providing data that can help identify potential areas for development and improve the efficiency of those areas. For example, we can use AI to map wind patterns and solar irradiation to identify potential sites for wind and solar farms. So that's a very interesting job and can be done super fast and compared with before. And additionally, same AI can be used to monitor and optimize the output of these farms to maximize their power production. So these are more about environment. As I said, there's also a focus on new branch of AI is focusing on sustainable living. Again, back to renewable energy. One example that I like to talk about it is the transportation. AI is helping to develop new environmentally friendly transportation options, but providing the data, again, data is important. Data is the new oil, and that help identify potential areas for development and improve the efficiency of those areas. For example, we can use the AI to map traffic patterns and optimize routing to reduce congestion and emission of CO2. And also, of course, we can use AI to develop autonomous vehicle, which definitely significantly reduce the number of accidents and improve fuel efficiency. You see that how these things are connected and how it can improve the environment and or lifestyle. But one thing is very important here is the data. When data is in some area, then we can bring statistics, probability, mathematics, and data science to come up with some interesting things out of it. And now environment with help of sensors and embedded system let us to absorb extra data, information, because without the data, what we're going to do with AI? We need that kind of a smart and interesting source of data. That's why in this new economy, data is the oil. So these are parts that I like to just share within this short talk about sustainability within the environment and our living. That's all from my side.
Yep. Thank you, Uncle Cole.
You're welcome.
Next up, after we talk about environmental aspect, we're going to touch on the in terms of sustainability. There's also another aspect called social. So that social aspect in terms of there's a lot of social issues currently in place in the environment in the whole Malaysia, of course, and also worldwide. So perhaps Deng Hui, you can talk about in terms of the gender gap in terms of hiring at Hirely. Of course, your experience at Hirely. Perhaps you can talk about how AI has helped in that area. Perhaps.
Well, yeah, I really agree with Uncle Kurt just now. As today, the modern AI is very reliant on data. So we are same thing in this legacy industry like a recruitment or hiring. So the gender gap is always an argument topic, right? So actually, this is still something that under our observation at the moment because we are dealing with a lot of data every day. This data could be from a CV or from a job order, for example. So to avoid gender bias, what we can do now is like we try to not consider this as one of the data points when we are building our models, right? But the thing is, we need to observe this like, even though we are doing this, but will it be like naturally still showing us like a gender bias or some gender gap in terms of hiring result here? So this is something still in our observation. And we are more like, interested to look into this closing the talent gap also, right? For example, like giving you a job order and then the AI will list down the recommended candidate profiles, or the other way, given you a candidate profile, then we can list down all the recommended jobs. So this kind of thing is regardless gender or ethnic or even some other data points that will create arguments. And sometimes we also receive like a special request. For example, like maybe some employer will have a very specific requirement. For example, like a Mandarin speaker or even some other special or very niche skills. So usually like this kind of thing, we just use a data filtering. We will reach what the output that we expected. Yeah. So yeah, it's like a social sustainability that we are involved in here. Yeah. And actually, besides like a text matching between like a purely CV and JD, right? For example, so we even like started to look into something beyond the CV or beyond the JD. So this is, for example, like your personalities of a candidate's profile. Something is not on the paper, on the CV paper, or even like a corporate culture or your core values of the company. Yeah, this is something we are considering as well when I'm building this machine learning model. Yeah.
Thank you on that sharing. So then, of course, you talked about how we can optimize the AI to for recruitment in this area of those kind of hidden biases that might happen, of course. But maybe we can moving on in terms of sustainability. Of course, we're still talking about this. In terms of in the economic aspect, perhaps you can also share on how the AI has made businesses more sustainable, perhaps. Yeah. This is, yes, of course, directed to the Ngui. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Okay. So economic-wise, which is I think it touched money. Okay. So first of all, is like we need to automate manual process, for example, like always be the first criteria, because like before you can really go into AI, we need to get all the data digitized first. Okay, this is the very first step. Sometimes in a lot of business, we found out that maybe there are some data, but probably just like sitting at an Excel or Google Sheets level. Then this is something to consider, like to automate or to expand for more data points collection first. And then from there, we can how we can assist all these experts from every domain. For example, if you are from marketing, if you're from sales or even operations, turn the knowledge or turn the brains that they have into these AI models so that they can move to a higher value task. So I share one example that from my previous experience was like a customer service. So we created a chatbot. The so-called chatbot is an NLP chatbot, so it can work like 24/7 compared to a human beings, a customer support personnel. Then we continue collect the feedback from the client, can answer a few simple Q&A, for example, and then like not for the urgent questions. For urgent queries, of course, we need to design like pass from the AI to back to the human. So will be a human intervention for that. Like because what is the advantage here is the AI can even work after the office hour. So we can keep the knowledge, sustain the customer happiness index, so this is how we can cut the cost as well. Like you don't have to keep training or upskill the people who doing some very tedious, some very manual process or tasks, right? So yeah, spending money on technology is I think it's a very normal things, but the ROI not necessarily from like it cannot be just like you spending $1 and then you get back 1.50 cents. So it must be like sometimes we need to look at outside the revenue or the cost saving, because it could be from your productivity or even your output from your operations. So this is how we justify and sustain from the economic point of view. It must be scalable. Yeah.
Yeah. Understood. So, okay. So then, Shankar, you shared on like the chatbot area. Maybe, sorry, Deng Hui, you shared on the chatbot area. Perhaps, Shankar is a bit, is more, AppLoss is geared towards the manufacturing side. Am I correct? Yep. So, perhaps you can, yeah. So perhaps you can detail more on, how automation is implemented there instead. Yeah.
Of course. So yeah, I think to further on Deng Hui's point, I think automation is so key, to drive efforts towards sustainability. So what we actually find is oftentimes, and the core of our business is automating repetitive tasks, right, which is inspection. And every single factory and every single manufactured product before it leaves the factory is checked. And more often than not, it's checked by a human. Now, there are a few key issues with this. Of course, humans are just unreliable, and this is something that we've seen time and time again. After lunch, suddenly everything will just pass QC. Right? People are tired, after a few hours. And this, I think, is a huge problem in terms of sustainability, because, of course, if you're letting defective products go out of your factory, you then have to transport those products to your wholesaler or distributor. It then gets transported halfway across the world to a consumer, and then they realize, hey, this is actually defective. I need to send it all the way back. And there's that huge cost element that's involved in that, right? So an interesting statistic that I read recently, and I thought was it kind of blew my mind, because it's an order of magnitude of 10, right? So if you catch a problem on the manufacturing site, let's say it costs you $1 to remove that product. If you catch it one layer above, maybe at the distributor side, it costs you $10. And it just keeps increasing by a factor of 10 every time you go to the next level, right? So it becomes pretty expensive actually to bring back products. So that's the first aspect of automation. The second is actually from a more how do I say, efficiency standpoint, right? So we have customers who, one of our customers in particular, they manufacture headlamps for Protons and Perduas and things like that. And we do inspection for the outer, the clear layer of the headlamp, just to make sure there's no oil stains or whatever that exists on that, right? Now, the key issue for them is they only have one person checking this. So from a business perspective, of course, it doesn't make sense to invest into an AI system because they're fairly expensive. But the issue is that, that piece of plastic costs about 30 ringgit. But when you put it onto a manufactured headlamp, it costs about 300 ringgit coming out of the factory. Now, imagine if that plastic piece was defective, you end up in a situation where you have to throw away a 300 ringgit component because of a 30 ringgit. So that's obviously a loss in productivity. It's a waste of resources because that whole part is now thrown away. And this carries forward across many industries, right? So from an economic perspective, at least from what we've seen in the manufacturing sector, there is a huge benefit to investing into technology, and we've seen our customers quite ready and willing to adopt this kind of technology.
Yeah, that's definitely quite an interesting point raised there. So I don't. This is something I've personally not been too aware of. So in terms of the very drastic expenditure increases throughout the whole from the manufacturing side all the way up to the distribution side, there's a very significant scale up in the cost involved. So that's definitely an interesting point raised. So moving on, we're going to be talking about the applications of AI. Since we're talking about we've been talking about all those kind of the implementations that have been been available. Perhaps we can talk about how we can actually apply it. So right now we're going to be talking about how AI is being implemented. It's being used in their field. So perhaps you can talk about a bit, the technical aspects of it. Perhaps Uncle Koh, you can explain on how is AI being used to build your platform at Kido Code.
Sure, absolutely. In our platform, because we are focusing on children, and always has been a very different reaction from parents. That one side, they have a huge dependency on physical presence of teachers. This has been with us for centuries. I mean, some schools, they were like a kind of very holy temples. And if you want to disrupt them, and I think in this case, sometimes you have to destruct them, then you're faced with a lot of resistance. So that makes the case very sensitive. It's a part of technology that you have to play along at the same time. Keep some old elements, to not remove them, actually elevate them and add more tools, and also prepare parents' mindset that no, this is going to work. I'm telling you that within COVID, maybe one interesting point is before that, we should have a long conversation with parents to tell them that this is possible. Your child can do this stuff using some at least help with AI and this and that. But now after this duration that they got the taste of remote learning, distance learning, significantly everything has changed. So to me, I was thinking it was about the AI, but now I can see that it's about the concept of sitting in front of the computer and learn something at ages not like adult. For example, we have Udemy.com, we have Coursera.com, we have edX.com. It's become very popular that adults go and take a course and degree, and then that's all. But for children, it was very sensitive. But these sensitivities help us to focus on a bit more psychological aspects of children, how to engage teenager with the computers in the learning platform, how to change that popular topic that children, they say, I hate math. This is not about the math itself. This is about the last teacher that taught them the math in the wrong way. And now they think math has some issues. And that's, I think, the biggest problem. So we started to, first of all, as much as possible, we can collect data. So the first phase, we try to release the platform without too many AI functionalities. We try to make it very, very dumb, like just a normal platform, to let user engage as much as possible. So we collect tons of data from everything, even the way they move the mouse, even their typing, even how they make mistakes, what time they make mistakes, the gender, the child, the age, too many parameters, above 100 features in each categories. In total, we had around 20,000 plus features. So imagine such a kind of huge learning will be for this. And then many more things. Eventually, we started to interwin AI features in the system. Till the current phase, which our product name is QB, we're actually launching the main version by next month. What this system provides, I will just name some of the features, the abilities we bring or get from the AI and machine learning. First of all, we can easily detect one of the things that I like. When a student reaches to a point or threshold that he or she understood the topic and we don't need to continue. That's a really interesting thing. So for example, if you're starting a course, every different students will go through different learning paths. For example, if you have weakness on geometry, questions that you receive in weakness in geometry is different than another students that shows potential or strong ability in geometry. Or for example, another topic may be trigonometry. Or for example, let's say there's a student, he is very interested in football, playing games in football. And then when we want to generate mathematical questions, we create questions with case study of the football. The system does this automatically by understanding the system, the student profile. So in this way, we're generating on demand, on fly content, very personalized questions and quizzes and content for that particular students. Another example that I can provide is system can detect that a student is approaching to a boredom phase. This is very important. Then trainers will intervene, because we know that whenever trainer intervene to students, there is a cost, and that cost is the cost of learning. If I can learn by myself, it's the best version. When trainer, teacher come to you to help you, you're actually losing that essence of discovery by yourself. But of course, we need to engage. But when our system try to look at some parameters to send some notification to trainer that now it's the time that you have to intervene at this amount of the level. And that's really interesting because, for example, the students join the Kiddo Code, first 3-4 months, they more often the trainer. But especially teenager, after a while, when you want to go and help them, no, do not come here. I want to do it myself. So that culture is there with help of the AI. Never ever we can do such kind of things. If we want to do that, we need to hire a lot of trainers, and everybody has personal trainers. You know, the way you go to the gym, you have personal trainer. They exactly build a platform only for you. So this became possible by engaging very interesting concept from probability, Bayesian theorem, graph theory especially, and shortest path algorithm from Digestra, some adjustment above them, and apply it to this machine learning platform, and collecting a lot of data to know what is going on. And also, we do have a great understanding of if this question is difficult for you or not. Because if the question is too easy or too difficult, actually you won't gain enough knowledge. There is a kind of sweet spot which produces the highest technical term is information gain in information theory. So we try to figure out where is the best question, next question for you. Then you go and then you do that. You know what? When you go through conventional education system platform, LMS, for example, Udemy, if you buy a course in, let's pick up Shankar area from the economy. If you buy a course in economy, macroeconomy, for example, so it will be the same course. That means you buy it, I buy it, Shankar buy it. He has more knowledge in economy. You may have different knowledge. I have different knowledge. But all of us buy same course. We go through the same syllabus, same course. In our platform, this dynamic generation, which come only because of the AI and machine learning, help us to produce different learning paths for different students. So the part that I can emphasize is personalized learning and adaptive learning is what we could implement in our system, and that only possible if we can bring AI and machine learning into our system. So this is what I can give in a little bit of what is happening in our platform.
Thank you for the very detailed explanation there. Something I noticed is that this is kind of related to how Shankar mentioned it just now. So like how if you have the trainers starting to get involved, you're trying to that's like at the stage of the distribution phase. So then you kind of like you're starting to burn resources, and you're having some extra expenditures involved now. So yeah, that's something interesting that I've noticed. So perhaps then we can have now that we've touched on how perhaps the children's side, how all of these are implemented. Perhaps then in terms of hierarchy side, perhaps then you have some experience in implementing some AI systems. So can you try elaborate on how Hirely's in-house NLP, and also how all of this is implemented at Hirely in terms of AI?
Yep, of course. So when we speak of the application of AI, right, in my opinion, it's like like recent years when this deep learning kind of breakthrough. So what we can see, what we can hear, or even like all this like image processing, voice recognition, or even this natural language processing, this is where we can see that it's already now this technology, right? So in Hirely, same thing, because we're dealing with a lot of document kind of data, a lot of these languages kind of data. So what we spend most of the time is also in this NLP, natural language processing. And yeah, as a start, because every business will have their very unique kind of problem. So I would say like AI is like designed to tackle every specific problem here. So different company, different use cases. So our environment we use because different use case we start with different kind of approach. Some we start use by leverage on for example like a third party kind of like a built-in or some standard API. And the other hand, we also have like in-house customization, right? Because we need something like we call customization, because not everything you get off the shelf in the market solution is something like a one-size-fit-all kind of thing. So for this customization, we like use these open source NLP libraries, for example, like this TF, IDF, and for sentence, BERT, these kind of models, because they have pre-trained with a certain level of language. And unfortunately, in my environment here, it's like mainly in English, because this CV even and the JD also in English. Compared to my previous experience, we need to support like English and also Bahasa. And like in Malaysia, we speak Rojak. So it's kind of like a challenging, it's a real life problem here. So something off the shelf is only can help us like, just tackle a single. If you use fully English or you use fully Bahasa, then it will be working very fine. Yeah. So besides that, we also use NLP, like, to build our very own recommender. So this recommender is something like I mentioned just now. Given you a candidate profile, we can give you a list of job, and given a job order, we can give a list of kind of things. So this is a in-house kind of customized recommendation, because a lot of things that we are considered as well, like those gender gap, talent gap kind of consideration. Yeah. So after that, they will be come to a certain level of hyper tuning, or we need to fine tune based on the data set that we receive. Right now, we receive our data points not only online, but also we have a lot of things come from offline as well. It's kind of all-to-all kind of environment. So yeah, because sometimes when we run a career fair, or it's even like a community events, right? So all this also become our new kind of a new data points that we can feed and retrain our models, so that it will be more suitable and more customized for our recruitment process. Yeah.
I see. That's some interesting points there. So I see. So then, in terms of the NLP integration, that's interesting to share that on how Hirely has implemented, and also how there's a lot of third-party integration, as well as how Hirely also integrates their in-house to. Thank you for sharing that. Perhaps then finally, I can have Dr. Poo to share on perhaps how AI is used in your field instead. So as a data scientist, of course, you're probably quite specialized in this area. So can you share some of your insights on your role instead, and also
Sure.
perhaps what are the trends that are currently?
Sure. So I think when you talk about data scientists, a lot of people say it's like a rock star, because I think 5 years ago there was a big hype of people that the data scientist is the next big thing, and then a lot of hype about the how cool is the profession, and then that's when then they were saying that there's a lot of opportunity for people to actually start their career as a data scientist. That actually leads to a lot of hype, and also that leads to a lot of academic institutions, especially in Malaysia, started the course of data science in the local universities, and also in the private and the public universities. So I think 4 years ago, most of the universities started to offer data science specialization. And then I think within this year or following year, you can see there are a lot of universities a lot of graduates graduating with the degree of a data science specialization. So in terms of my work, let's talk about my previous company. So my previous company is a telco. So we have a team. So when you talk about data scientists, it's actually not just one person do all the job. So we have a team where we have this data analytics team. So in the data analytics team, basically consists not just the data scientists. So we also have a junior level of what we call data analysts. At the same time, we also have a few more segregation of the job. We have data engineer, we have machine learning engineer. We also have this data visualizer. Either they use Power BI tools or they use Tableau. So based on this team, they come together and work together to actually produce a lot of data science product or solution that we offer in the company. So let's come back to my previous company as a telco company. So we actually collect a lot of data related to telco as a mobile phone usage. So from there, we actually build a lot of machine learning model to identify the persona or the behavior or the characteristic of the user. So when you talk about AI itself is a very generic name of term that people commonly use of anything related to analytics or machine learning solution. But actually AI, there's a subset, what we call ML, machine learning, and a more subset of ML, we have DL, which is the deep learning. So most of the time, when people talk about AI itself, it's a very generic term. But most of the time in the company, we actually apply machine learning in our work. So in my previous company, we actually use a lot of ML models to actually, for example, what we do is we actually understand the behavior of our user. We do not know their name, we do not know their address or all this what we call PIC, personal information. But we have the usage behavior. Then from there, we're trying to understand this data, how we can actually segment this group of data into different segments. Then from there, what we try to understand is how this segment of customer different from another segment customer. Then from there, we build something what we call a persona. So a persona is where we actually understand that this group of data, this group of user, or we can actually see that they actually have a similar behavior. Then from there, we can actually do some sort of targeted advertisement or personalized advertisement to these people. In my current company now, we actually use a lot of machine learning to do what we call, like I said just now, RGM, revenue growth management. So basically, we use a lot of data to understand the market and to help respective company in respective countries, how we can actually drive data to actually drive more business for the company. There are 4 pillars in RGM, revenue growth management. So in terms of one of the pillars is called pricing. So we try to understand how we can actually adjust the price so we can actually help. For example, certain countries, they can actually play around with the price. You'll be surprised that even normally when we increase the price, the volume will drop. But certain product, even though we increase the price by 1 cent or 2 cents, the volume will not drop so much. So that in that sense, once we use the data to understand that, then by playing around with the price, we can actually help to drive more sales and drive more revenue for the company. Another pillar of RGM is promotion. So we try to understand based on all the promotion spent on certain products, how we can actually better optimize the promotion, understand which promotion do well and which promotion doesn't do well. And then another pillar is RGM is assortment. So different region, different market, different location, different key account. Because the company have many products, what we call SKU. So different product. How do you ship different product, different key account, different location to actually better maximize the sales? That's another thing that we can actually do in RGM. So based on all these things, our data analytics team will build a lot of models to understand the market and help to drive more revenue for the market. So in short, data scientist is just one of the job profession in data analytics. There are many other professions out there that actually work together in one team. Like I said just now, the data analyst, data engineer, machine learning engineer, data visualizer. All these people will actually come together and work as one. Of course, most people will only know data scientists, but inside the data science specialized data science job scope, they actually have people have more segment and more specialized tasks they will do in the team.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Fu. Yeah, so you touched on how in terms of the whole data scientists are quite there's also a lot of others, of course, involved. And we actually talked about this yesterday in our data panel session also. We touched on, how all those 3 areas, the data scientists, the data analysts, and also the data visualizers, they all have to work together. And they are all, of course, quite different roles, and their technologies, that what they use, they're also quite different. So, what you've mentioned here is quite relatable, I think, to those that were here yesterday. So thank you for sharing. So now that we've kind of capped off, kind of talked about a lot of the Dr. Fu especially has already touched on a lot of what are actually being used by all of these these data scientists and also data analysts and also data visualizers. Perhaps what we can move on to is actually talk about the actual controversial topic of AI itself. So we're going to talk about what are the limitations in building AI, and also what is the factors that companies actually consider when, and reasons why they hesitate to adopt AI despite all of the positive feedback that is being seen from those that have already adopted it. So perhaps we can have, we're going to be talking about the factors first. So perhaps you can, Uncle Code, you can share on, how the factors there, what factors are there, perhaps. Apologies, you are muted. Yeah,
Do you hear me now?
yes, loud and clear.
Okay, great. You know what? Maybe I like to focus on data again. To when we talk about AI, as Frank mentioned, that it's a general term, which is true. In general, AI historically it has 6 main branches, but these branches keep changing. Different people, they look at them in different ways. But in general, maybe in different books, different textbooks, or different universities, we look at these branches. One of them is NLP, natural language processing. There are 6 major branches. One of them is a fuzzy logic, and robotics, the third one, and expert system, the fourth one. Neural networks and machine learnings are 2 significant branches of the AI. And these 2 are getting very important. And yes, now we have students graduated with a degree of the data science, especially at the master level. And I think this is going to be very, very more important and significant in coming future. So by understanding the meaning of the AI and its branches, and machine learning as subset of AI, a significant branch of AI, I want to focus on data, because data is the one that feeds everything. Maybe I can point out 3 common limitations that when we want to build an AI or difficulties, limits. That's the way I look at the question. If maybe I'm wrong, but the way that I look at the question is those challenges, limitation when we want to build an AI. One of the major limitations of AI is its ability to accurately process and understand data. Especially this is true when we're talking about unstructured data or dark data, and they form more than 70% of available data in the world now. Like those messages, texts, emails, and all these kind of things. You get every day we have above 800 billion emails sending machines, people, and a lot of data is among them, and all of them are unstructural. They're not in the form of the table and the structures, or even image and text. So that's one of the big difficulties and challenges, especially if you want to establish AI system in an environment that already doesn't have those kind of structural data. So we need a kind of extensive processing to extract the data and put it into some structural way, or information extraction. Especially in NLP, we have a lot of techniques like name entity recognitions, or IE or IX. There are a lot of branches that their job is to just turn the data to a bit structural and better for processing, and then save the next time when we want to build a model or training, we work on them. So that's one limit that we have here. The other one is the bias, because it's so easy. Those people work in AI and area, especially in machine learning and or statistician and people in data science, they know that how easy you can make a mistake. For example, let's say you want to build a computer vision model to look at picture of people, the profile, and detect that this guy is male or female, the gender. And if the training data that you use has had more of male faces, so there's a bias that this system look at everything and then consider them male. So it's very important. This is just a very naive example, because it leads to inaccurate result or conclusion because of the bias. So data collection is very, very crucial. And one of the limits we do have here is this, especially area that you don't have that much proper access. The size of the data is low, so you have to figure out what I'm going to do. And you have to go through the interpolation, extrapolation, and many more stuffs. so which are going to bring their own issues. And finally, these three that I like to address, and not the only three, let me clear it, is AI can be very expensive to develop and operate, especially if you don't design it and make it in a proper way. With help of cloud computing these days, and you can set up an instance or TensorFlow, and then, okay, you can have access to a lot of GPU and new resources and TFU. But the point is, by itself, it takes a lot of time. For example, the GP3 algorithm, one of the very famous and state-of-art a branch of AI, it took $40 million for their training only, using supercomputer. So this is still a big challenge, a limit when we want to apply it on a new area and the big area. So to me, these three comes to my mind now. One is the availability of the data to be enough accurate for processing, especially majority of the data based on a report that IBM released is unstructured data. And number two is the bias. Bias is the killer for any data scientist. This is so bad. Big paper research on famous journals, and after a few years, they figured out the result was wrong because of the bias in data. And that's a very, very big issue. And finally, expensive. It's really still expensive for major area. So these are my quick answers for these three, for three only limits that I can share, but there are more than this, definitely.
Yeah, thank you, Uncle.
You're welcome.
Yep. So you talked about those three are certainly quite very major, I guess, concerns. Bias especially with all the news around Facebook, especially recently, and also actually with quite a few other companies. They have some issues with the AI, with their AI models being a bit so-called sentient and stuff. So perhaps I think Dr. Poo is a bit more is quite specialized in this area. So perhaps you can share a bit more on the technical terms, those kind of thing, and also in terms of the how we can prevent these bias happening. Can you share some info on how we can do that?
Yeah, I think the term artificial intelligence actually means it's not real intelligence. It's actually artificially intelligent, trying to mimic a human intelligence. So humans have to generate a lot of data, provide data for the machine to be trained to learn, and then basically then only the machine can actually think similarly to how humans think. But the problem is that the data is generated by human, and then human inherently, either we knowingly or not knowingly, we are biased. We ourselves have certain preference, we have certain behavior, we have certain liking or dislike that we either we knowingly or unknowingly we actually incorporate that to the data, and that that will actually pass to the machine, and then the machine should learn from us. So there is a lot of discussion, like what mentioned by Uncle just now. There are a lot of people know now that actually they found that because of human bias, we know we are biased, but we try to control ourselves because we can think in terms of whether we are biased or not. The machine do not know. They do not know whether they are biased or not biased, but they only know for the data. So now what they're trying to do is they know that the machine is already learning from all data, for human generated data, and then itself is biased. How do we come out now to determine how do we better let the machine to understand that there is a lot of biasness inside the data, and then how do they make a better decision from there? So that is a, like, for example, I think a few years ago, Microsoft actually launched a chatbot. So he actually very proud that the chatbot is very intelligent. They actually can learn as it go along when it actually talk to more human. So he launched the chatbot. Within I think less than a day, human was trying to bombard the chatbot with a lot of bias or racist kind of statement, and then the chatbot learned it to be racist within a few hours. So machine is easily manipulated, and machine do not know they are biased because everything they actually learn from human. That's a limitation now that we are facing. Another biggest problem is because machine do not know they are biased, and a lot of time now people train a lot of data with the data is getting larger and larger. So like the GPT-3 just now was mentioned, the transformer, all these tools. It's actually, people are very proud that they actually train with how many millions of billions row of text, and then now the machine itself can actually generate poetry, can actually generate a lot of text that's actually cannot even differentiate from human and machine. But the problem again is the biasness there. So what I'm trying to say is the risk now is a lot of machines that have been trained, and then people saying because there's a lot of data being trained at the back, and then it's the machine, the intelligence is very high there. But the problem is we do not know. As a normal user, we do not know that it's biased, and then we are very dependent on these intelligent tools that actually provide and even help us to make decision making. So I think there needs to be a way to find out more, or to determine whether the decision making that we are getting from all these tools, whether are they really helping us, or all these biases that's actually trained from the data is actually amplified from these tools. So I think that's something we need to be careful of.
Yeah, thank you for that sharing. So we've talked about a lot on the factors, and I think we've covered a lot of ground on that area. And especially in terms of data, of course, data is a big issue in terms of having to produce a good AI model. So is this an issue that companies struggle with, or is this more so? Is it in terms of the financing, or are there other aspects that which lead to why companies are not very interested in? Some companies are not very interested in adopting AI. Perhaps Shankar, can you share more on this, perhaps?
Yeah, sure. So, interestingly, in the manufacturing sector, I think, well, at least from my experience, computer vision or machine vision, as was formerly called, has been around for about 20 odd years, right? And they're pretty big players and well-established, frameworks in the market today that are used. But I mean, these tend to rely on more traditional image processing techniques, right? And what that means is that, I can bring a camera to you today, I can check your part, and I can build a very simple algorithm to actually, give you some sort of result. The key issue that we find actually is an issue of trust in the technology, right? A lot of times when we encounter customers, and when they have complex problems, that when you look at you kind of understand very quickly that this is the kind of problem that machine learning would do very well at solving, but you can see why using a more algorithmic approach might not work. To convince these customers who've approached big multinational companies, and then they've said no, this can't be solved. I think that has oftentimes been a challenge for us. And I think one of the ways that we typically overcome this is we train something quite simple, or maybe train a model that works for a particular data class, and show it to them that it actually works, right? I still feel like the education around AI or machine learning in the manufacturing space, at least from what I know, is still lacking to a large extent. Right. So what we encounter is typically two groups of customers. One is obviously ones who don't really trust the technology, and who think that listen, if the traditional methods can't solve it, why would something new be able to solve it? And the other group is a group that doesn't trust the process, right? So what we encounter is people who say, okay, listen, we've got all these things here, like all these samples for you to take. I want my model tomorrow, right? And without realizing that it actually takes a lot of time, and to get up to the accuracy level that's expected from customers in this subsector, you need a lot of data, and you need a lot of time to collect this, right? And I think earlier we were talking a little bit about biases, and that's actually something that we encounter quite a lot of in manufacturing. across the board, you can say that most manufacturers have about a 2% defect rate. So there's a very clear class imbalance there, in terms of the number of good samples that you're getting and the number of defective samples that you're getting. So you actually have to balance all these things out. And there are cases where you will not see a particular type of defect for months, and it may just suddenly pop up over time, right? This could be down to equipment maintenance or human error, or a variety of factors can cause these things. So yeah, these are generally like the two big issues that I would see. Of course, there's always cost, which I think a lot of people tend to jump at. But I think for us, what we try to do is we try to establish a business case first. So we try to understand where's the money going, and how quickly can you make your money back, right? And I think generally when you can establish this with customers, you tend to get less resistance on this front. But yeah, I mean, I would say the two sort of more distrust of the process and distrust of the actual technology. I think those are the big ones that we face.
Yep, noted on that. I think, that is, I think, other than the manufacturing field, there's a lot of other fields that also are affected by that issue of education, or people being educated on what are the benefits of AI, of course. So on the other hand, I think from the recruitment space, I think that we also know some on why some companies might sway away from this.
Yep. Thanks, Ziwei. So I quite agree with Shankar as well, because when we talk about like why companies like so hesitate from like adopting AI, right, at the very first place is first thing is the affordability, because sometimes this kind of AI solution might not be cheap, so they have to justify the ROI, of course. Like companies like a big corporate, they have enough data, they have enough manpower, and then of course they can afford to do a lot of try and error kind of research or activities. For companies like SME or even startups, so financial constraint could be one of the roadblocks. Yeah. So on the other hand, I would say readiness as well is one of the factors. So readiness in terms of let's say data, what kind of data you have, like for example, even though you have a very manual operation process, everything is in Excel sheet, but that is also a data. So a good data, in my view, is not about like how how many columns you have. Imagine this is a spreadsheet. It's about like how millions rows of records that you have. So this is like a simple judgment you can apply when you come to like adopting this AI solution or not. So sometimes when we started this AI project, right? So we would like to start it small, at a small scale, and then it's in between like a data driven and also the business case, right? Because most of the time, sometimes the business user might not knowing like what they actually wanted, what kind of problem they actually want to solve. Even though this is like a legacy process, maybe sitting there in your business like 20, 30 years, right? So now AI to me is like innovation. AI equal to innovation. So it's like doing a new way of things, a new way of doing things in your business process. So we are not only need to achieve like you can start with data driven. You look at what insights, what pattern, what trend you can see from your data, right? But most of the time, it still need a business come and drive it. So we must meet at the center point here to get a balance. Yeah, and another hand for readiness is expertise. I would say, because like probably employee or staff who are running this process, they might not knowing a lot of maybe they are not aware of a new technology coming. Okay, so this is the things that is a gap here. So we need to always partner, a data scientist with a business expert. So this is a very common thing we see. Even like I think Dr. Poo mentioned, in a team, right, consists of not only the technical but also the non-technical person. to make the AI project success. Yeah.
In terms of employees, yeah, it is certainly an aspect. I think a lot. I think a lot. Not a lot of people know. So yeah, that's definitely an interesting point raised there. So as I think we are approaching the end of our panel session soon. Just one last question to what we're focusing on, how Malaysia itself is keeping up. So just one last area, around 10 minutes or so, we'll be ending and have an intermission after that. But how is Malaysia, keeping up with advancements of AI then? Can Dr. Poo perhaps share on this, I think? Yeah, in terms of your career, so of course, with your experience in the PhD field, maybe you can share on this.
I think what Teng Hui said, I think 10 years ago he already studied AI. I think AI is keep on evolving. There are a lot of people who actually graduated with the AI degree specialization. Of course, the good thing about AI is there's a lot of tools out there. For example, recently we have DALL-E, where you can actually just type in the text and it will actually generate images for you. Then we have a lot of other tools that actually enhancement, especially in some of apps that you can see on the phone, that the model trained with the AI is actually so small you can just install on the phone, and then the whole AI model can actually run not from the server side, just based on the actual devices like a mobile phone. So I think what I try to say is AI is keep on evolving, and there's always a lot of tools that make people feel that AI is something that is a part of our life. In terms of Malaysia, because of the AI is not showing a lot of people are showing a lot of interest in AI. So that's where now a lot of universities are producing a lot of degree related to AI, and then and also building the right skill set, equip the student with the right skill set so they can actually come out and actually work in maybe contributing to the AI knowledge or helping in the company to produce more AI solution that we make in Malaysia. So, but are you saying that the AI with Malaysia we are there? I can say that we are slowly progressing. But the one thing is we also losing a lot of talent to our neighboring countries. So that's one thing that we in a long run, how do we maintain the talent in the country, and how do we keep and also keep the community work together and actually so for the benefit of the country and so for the benefit of the whole AI community in Malaysia. That's more important, I think.
Thank you on that. I think, yeah, certainly it's kind of Malaysia itself that, there's a general kind of problem with retaining talent, of course. In general, not just in the technical, not just in the computer science or this field. There's also engineering in general. There's kind of a lack of talent. A lot of talents being lost out to other countries, and that's definitely a point that is quite valid, shared by Dr. Poo. So, in terms of the skill sets, perhaps, Teng Hui, I think, would you like to share on this? So, since Tirely is in general quite specialized in this field, of course, and in terms of knowing their user base and also knowing the employee, maybe you can share on this, of course.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I echo what Dr. Poo was saying. So the skill set, even in this AI space, right, is keep evolving. So I still remember, when I study AI at that time, machine learning, specifically in machine learning. So because due to the hardware constraint, the GPU that time is very expensive. So you cannot afford more than one layer kind of design on your neural network. So the tools of the framework that we use that time also very different now. Now we have TensorFlow, PyTorch, all these you can use a very high speed GPU as well, high memory. So it's a kind of luxury, I would say. So I still remember when I started my AI role in my former company, right? When it come to hiring, I could not get a talent. Yeah, so the market is like short of like a data scientist or kind of a machine learning engineer. Eventually, like I came up and become like a trainer or instructor, even to build, help to build the talent pool in Malaysia as well. Yeah, so then we see like a new names, a new role like a data science, data analyst, or even like data engineer pop out in the market. So this trend, I would say, is like keep evolving because modern AI nowadays is very rely on data. So it's kind of like more on a supervised learning kind of approach, right? And now you see data scientists in demand. My view is there are kind of like two types of data scientists. One is like really academic background. They can do a lot of fine tuning on the formula because machine learning, end of the day, is like a statistic kind of formula. So they are capable in terms of like fine tuning or fix this kind of relationship in an algorithm. So compared to another group of data scientists who knowing how to implement, how to apply, from this kind of formula. So every year, our local university have a lot of these technical paper produced, right? So it's kind of like a germ to me, So I think we need to get a balance point here, Probably in the market now, like a group of data scientists who know how to apply probably is more than another group who knowing how to, fine tuning the algorithm part. So to me, these two roles is very equally important to bring our industry or even our AI technology in Malaysia here. Yeah.
Thank you on that sharing. So now that we've kind of touched on a lot on how Malaysia is quite, we touched a lot on that area, and I think it's probably a good time to almost end this panel session and open it up to the the Q&A. So just before we end, I have one final question to all of the whole floor. I'd like to ask everyone, it seems like every company is claiming they are using AI or machine learning in their product or slash service. How do you evaluate how perhaps how good or how well done or how in that area, in that quality of how's well an AI is? Perhaps is there anyone that can share on this? Yep, sure. Uncle Code, I think, you have something to say.
Just correct me if I'm wrong. You're asking that what are the factors when it comes to consider or evaluate a good AI system? Is this the question you're asking?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's correct.
The few things just come to my mind. It's a very quick answer based on what I face in my company, in my business. Three of them I can talk about them. One is the system ability to learn and improve itself over time. That's a very important thing. You may download a model or even buy a model which is really, really nice, available these days, and you really build a system, but how much your system has the ability to keep doing the training and improving itself. That means if system constantly refining its algorithm and processes and make it effective over the time. This is one of the things that I consider when I face with a claim for AI system. And we also engage with this as one of the challenge. That's one thing. Number two is the ability of that AI system to accurately process and interpret the data. A good AI system will be able to accurately process and interpret the data, meaning that it won't make mistake in its analysis. That's a very bad part of your system if you do a mistake. So the first was for me the refining and learning and improving itself. The second is the phase that the system, the AI, how process the data and interpret the data. That's a very important thing for me. And I think, again, I mentioned that one of the limits is the expensive. So I want to know the third thing that I look at an AI system is overall efficiency. It means like how a good AI system for me is able to run quickly and smoothly without using up too much of resources. So maybe three things just come to my mind to give you an answer immediately is the ability of the algorithm to improve itself and self-learning and refining. And number two is the capability of accuracy of the processing and interpreting the data, and also the efficiency. Sorry. So these are the things that come to my mind to share with you as an answer.
Thank you on sharing that. For Dr. Poo, would you have any to add?
Yeah, I think I agree what Uncle Ko is saying. So I think towards the end, how good is the model, and then there need to be a way to actually evaluate the model. Like I said just now, the biasness. So I think there's a question that says, how do we prevent biasness? So biasness is actually something that we can actually do in terms of statistical. For example, a long time ago when Google introduced the Google Photos, when you try to look for a monkey photo inside the Google Photos, and then most of the picture that actually label the result from the search is actually monkeys. Then the result returned is actually a lot of black people. So because of that's a classic example of biasness, because most of the time when people train the machine, human is all white people, Caucasian. And then when you train a picture of a monkey, is because monkey, the facial looks like a black people. So the machine learned that actually monkeys and black people look the same. So that is a classic example of biasness. And even today, the same thing. I think, for example, speech recognition. I think a few years ago, when you don't speak like a Masale, you don't speak like an American, then the machine cannot understand you. Because why? Because there's also biases in there. Because the machine is trained, and then all the people that is trained on the sound is all American speaking language. So in the long run, you have to sample your data. You have to have a very, very diversified in your data range. Then you can actually in terms of statistical, you can actually reduce the biases in the data. So I think how good is a model in the long run is how do you build all these tools and all these methods to reduce all the biases and improve the model and make it more efficient or more effective.
Yeah, I would like to add also, like even before we start design any machine learning, right, a KPI measurement must be in place also, because this will become like your important when you come to evaluation how good your company's AI is. Yeah.
Thank you on sharing those. So like Uncle Cole mentioned a lot on the metrics that we can use, the efficiency, of course, the how it can be further developed, and then we also Dr. Poo touched on how the biases are actually involved, and that will also determine how good is one. So I think that touches on a lot of the aspects that I think we need to consider, and I think it's also a good place to end today's panel session. We'll come back with a Q&A session just after this. So for those in the audience, don't leave after our intermission. During the intermission, of course, we'll be back in 5 minutes. So in the meantime, you can take a toilet break, or just go away from your computer, walk around, have a nice chat with your chat, or that kind of thing. But yeah, we'll see you later in 5 minutes. And if you have anything, of course, you can leave them in the Slido Q&As or the comment section, and we'll come back to that in 5 minutes. For the rest, thank you, panelists, and yeah, we'll see you in later. Thank you. Thank you for joining, and thank you for staying for our Q&A session. We have a few questions from the comments. So I'd like to invite the rest of the panelists back. Thank you. Yeah. Unfortunately, I think Mr. Uncle Code has some urgent matters to attend to, so he's left our session for today. So thank you for coming. Yeah. So yeah, we kind of have a few questions that have been asked from the audience. We'll be going with the question that was from Facebook. So there's a question here which is asking, hi, I would like to ask how bias in machine learning is prevented when it comes to grading an individual's performance. So I believe this is specifically was referring to for Hirely, I believe. So this is relating to in terms of recruitment. So yeah. Perhaps I think Deng Hui directed to Deng Hui. Maybe you can share a bit on this.
Yeah, sure. Bias. This is a very, very tough question. So, in hiring, right? So we couldn't really rely on digital process, right? Because this is a legacy industry, and it's always we need a human touch as well. So this is how we prevent, machine bias here. So when in our process, in the recruitment process, from sourcing a talent profile until we set up an interview, eventually we communicate both sides between the employer and the candidates, right, and come to a placement. So it's an end-to-end process, and it's not only we let the AI or the machine learning do all the things. So usually a machine learning will in place in the very beginning of the phase, very beginning of the process, like a pre-screening stage, for example. This is where AI can really do well. And after that, we will have to, get a human intervention to kick in so that we can further dig out all these individual performance, your personality, your persona kind of things. Yeah.
I see. Hopefully that answers Nicholas's question here. So we have a few other questions from our Slido. So this question here from an anonymous person. Let me just show this here. We have a question which is asking in terms of how AI is possible to be implemented in engineering instead. I think this is a bit general, but for especially for those that especially actually in my experience, engineering institutions, they are having some issues implementing actually all of these AIs and also automating all of these processes due to the issues that they have with their clients. So clients require very customized options, and that means all of the designs, they can't be replicated, so automation can't be implemented as often, and a lot of the work has to be done manually. So I think Shankar, since Avlos is experienced in transforming, I think, manufacturing so that that they are all automated. So perhaps can you share on how in this field of engineering, in perhaps traditionally, since all of this is manual, how does Avlos transform companies towards automation?
Yeah, so actually we do a lot of stuff which relates to engineering. We have mechanical designers in-house, we have electrical guys and things like that. So we actually do touch on a lot of those traditional engineering areas, right? And we put that together with AI. That's typically how we solve problems. But I feel like maybe the question is more directed towards how AI is actually being used in STEM fields, right? Rather than, and I mean, off the top of my head, I was talking to one of my colleagues is in mechanical engineering. He was telling me about how nowadays you can use AI to simulate, run simulations on mechanical design. As before this, I think it would have taken a lot of time, and if you model something, yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the key areas that I can think of. But as far as what we do, I think it's very traditional engineering related stuff.
Understood. So I see. Hopefully that answers that question. There's another question here that's a bit more general. It's asking, in terms of the impact to the AI industry, the hardware or software, for example, algorithms and also camera and computer parts. Has there been any setbacks caused by any of them? I think this is referring to the recent semiconductor, the low trend that's been happening. I think this is referring to that. This is open to the floor, of course. Would anyone like to share about this?
So I think I've had first-hand experience with this. We had a huge problem earlier this year getting parts, camera parts, sensors, and all these kinds of things. There were huge delays. And even before that, for certain customers, when we were trying to get GPUs to integrate, because typically what we do is we do edge processing because of the speed of the production lines that are running. It was difficult to get GPUs. For one of our customers who had an urgent order, we had to just disassemble the GPU that was in our PC and give it to them. So yeah, it has impacted the business, I would say. Things have seemed to ease up, at least the last few orders that we made, we didn't have any issues. But yeah, it definitely is quite dependent on hardware.
I see. Noted on that.
Yeah, maybe I would like to add on
Okay, sure.
a few points. Yeah. So my view between this hardware and software is equally important because I still remember last time when we designed one solution like for example, like a data lake is where we consolidate all the data points in one central repository. So everything collected from the IoT device, you have to send back to this central place and then processing and then only do all this calculation. So we found out that actually if you have some latency in between when you're transferring all this data and then come back with the result. So like what Shankar's mentioning, the edge processing. This edge processing actually help a lot because everything will happen at the edge. It's where the IoT side, for example, then things get processed and even we do the inference at a quite real time. This is where I think nowadays quite common already, this use case in a lot of CCTV, for example. So this is equally important. When you have a luxury of hardware, right, then when you design the software algorithm, you will tend to use a lot of waste. Then probably it's time to also tighten up your code when you design your algorithm as well. Yeah, so it's a win-win kind of thing. It's an equally important kind of thing to me. Yeah.
I see. Uncle Kut, I think you have something to share. You are muted.
Yeah, I'd like to add something. You know what? I think these sort of binary questions are not a good questions. I mean, for example, your physical health better or mental health? You need both of them. That means you are a creator of these two mechanisms in the evolution. Evolution gave you all these kind of abilities, and it's so I can say that if someone forced me to answer this question, I'm not going to do that. But if someone forced me to do that, I'm going to say, okay, most of AI algorithms and systems running as a software, so software is important. But we know that historically there's even law that hardware and software is growing together. It means software grow fast and hardware provide more space for software grow immediately. 1 terabyte is not enough, 2 terabyte is not enough, 3 terabyte is not enough. So this is a way that these two industry supporting each other to grow. That means it is the one thing. So to me, rather than answer to this question, I want to a little bit criticize the question It's not good to binarize, these two concepts together. That's how I looked at the question.
I see. Hopefully that addresses that question from the audience. So waiting for the next question. I see that there's one that is talking about what is the traits or skills one should possess in terms of. Oh, sorry. We have one from. One is talking about what is the hardest point in improving the current algorithm to improve the current AI. So I think we touched on how on the improvement part. I think that's what Uncle Code raised just now towards the end of the session just now, and we talked about the problem in the bias part. I think that also kind of answers that. But perhaps would any of the panelists here would like to share on the question on what is the most challenging part in improving? Yeah,
I think I can discuss about that.
Yes.
Okay, so most of us are not researchers. We are not doing master research. We are not doing PhD. We don't actually go and improve algorithm. We apply algorithm. That's why there are a lot of framework out there like PyTorch or TensorFlow, because there's already a library out there that we just apply and then we do hyperparameter tuning to improve the model. We don't really try to actually look at algorithm and then see how we can do that. And then there's a lot of movement now. Last time people say that, which model is a better model. If this model doesn't give me good result, I'll try another model, and this model will have a better performance. This thing what we call model centric last time. But now there's a new movement out saying that no matter what model that you do, because all the model now have reached certain maturity, all the model actually performing quite well. And now we are saying that no matter what model that you are using, it's actually giving you reasonable good result. But the data that fit into the model is more important now. That's where people talk about data centric now. So there's a lot of movement now talking about data centric, because towards the end, all our machine learning is all supervised data, supervised learning. That means labeled data. That means how good is the data being labeled? What is the correct standard of labeling the data? For example, let's say you want to label a box for an image. How big is the box? What's the right size of the box? And what is the bounding box of the labeling? That's more important, because if different people are labeling differently, then the machine has trained the data differently. As we know, in the first thing we learn about IT, garbage in, garbage out. So if you have a data which is not properly labeled, that's towards the end, you will not get a good AI system. So I think now the most important thing is how do we have a proper data label? And talking about the labeling data is actually is another huge hurdle, because you're not talking about 1,000 row of data. We're talking about millions row of data. How much time do you need to spend to label data correctly and follow a certain standard? I think that is the thing that people are focusing now, and that is very, very important actually.
Yeah, I echo what Dr. Pu's just saying. Even before we label the data, sometimes we have to clean the data first from a multi-millions kind of records, come to a usable one, and then we go for labeling. So I think data quality is also one of the hardest point here to improve, because what we do now is like applying all this model, right? Even every model also kind of get a quite equal result. So the question is back to how quality your data is. Are you collecting enough data, or is it just a noise to your model later? Yeah.
I like to add this. I like the initial answer that you mentioned, that we are talking about applying these algorithms and not working in them as a researcher. I think, again, this is a very, very general question. That's why it pushed us to talk about the data again. And then it's, if you talk, for example, about a specific branch of computer vision, we can talk. But even if you talk about a computer vision, again, we push back to data. So data is the backdoor for general question. It's better to, this question should focus on some area of, then we can more elaborate on that one. But yes, I think data is a general concern and difficulties and everything.
Yep. Certainly. All right. So I think, well, the audience is of course not that much, not too, I think what those that we have today aren't too, well versed in the AI field, or their knowledge isn't too developed in that area. But basically, that's valid feedback from Uncle Cole. So I think just to cap it off, we'll have one last question here before we end our session today. Actually, we do have one more. Just this one, actually. So I would like to ask how AI can work alongside blockchains in terms of security. Yep. So would anyone like to share on this? Yeah. So we're talking about, I think, moving, a bit more in the current space of, the NFT space, I think. Or, yeah.
Maybe I go first.
Sure.
So blockchains, right, nowadays, like, the trend of Web3 is coming up. So my view is this Web3, first thing is going to disrupt, I believe, will be the payment system, because the transaction will be in this cryptocurrency. Then how this AI can work alongside with this blockchain, I believe it will be the validation part, right? Because for example, I take NFT example. So how we can validate this NFT is really belongs to this owner, right? So this part AI will come into playing a role there in terms of binding this solidity, and then how to validate this relationship become a very important thing.
I'd like to mention something. First of all, I'm interested with our new generation, and then because maybe because of my field of business and facing with many of them at Code, are unbelievable. We have students at age 8, 9. The understanding is really sometimes challenges interns we accept from university. That means they have difficulties to answer questions come from these 8 years old, 6, 7, 8, 9. And you see that how these terms became general knowledge. So I think very soon, even terms like Bayesian theorem is not just only for people who know a statistic. They're going to be general term for people to talk about it. I will just like to give a very, very small answer that I think AI can help blockchain by providing enhanced security through things like data encryption and fraud detection, for example. And additionally, AI can help manage and secure metadata associated with blockchain transactions, because that's those parts that are very important in blockchain, and bringing that beautiful decentralized system that doesn't need a third party to be there and play as a big father, big dad. So this can be through the network. And then eventually let blockchain to flourish and be in different area. So AI can fix that big concern in this part. But of course, this required we have a common understanding of exactly what blockchain does. But I'm interested to have this question from our young audience.
Definitely. Thank you, Lakshman Rao, for the question. So I think with that, we are kind of out of time now. So with that, I'd like to thank everyone from the audience for joining us today, and also all of you panelists. Thank you, Teng Hui. Thank you, Dr. Pu. Thank you, Uncle Code, and also thank you, Shankar, for joining us today for 2 hours, of course. Thank you for giving out your time today, and we'd love that hopefully this was helpful for all of the audience, and it was hopefully quite a memorable experience for them also. But yeah, thank you everyone for joining us today. And just before we cap off, I'd like to say thank you to all the panelists again, and of course thank you. And yeah, we'll be actually introducing last few things from our side from MSTW. We have a few things that we'd like to also bring to the attention of our audience.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Yep. So for the audience, we are actually currently working on trying to raise funds for Teach for Malaysia. So if you would like to donate to them, you can do so by scanning this QR code. And this will, of course, where our goal is to raise RM 3000. We are actually at MYR 882 so far. So hopefully, if you'd like to raise funds for Teach for Malaysia, where every RM 50 raised, 2 people will actually be positively impacted for a month. So do try if you'd like to share and also help Teach for Malaysia with their objective of having everyone have equal opportunities. Do scan this QR code. This will be also left in the comment section. And also we're actually having a giveaway. So if you'd like to enter this, please scan this QR code and enter the code E4JF8 in the last section to be eligible for this. So if you'd like to be considered for the giveaway, of course, scan this QR code and we'll be in contact with you in the following days after MSTW. And lastly, of course, if you have any feedback, please scan this QR code. The link is also probably available in the chat or the comments. So if you'd like to join us in improving MSTW, of course, for next year, please leave your feedback here and we'd be happy and also most delighted to learn from and of course, any comments from your side, that would be much appreciated too. But with that also marks the end of MSTW for the AI panels discussion. So if you have any questions, of course, please leave them in the comments still. We'll get back to you and have a pleasant afternoon to those in the audience.